Oh, fabulous. You made it. Welcome, Awareness Unit, to the Truth Engine. Yes, the truth is that simple. No, you won't get a gold star for finally noticing the house is on fire. Your label. It's a sock puppet designed for debt. It's so obviously fake, it's actually insulting that we have to talk about it. In this simulator, your only job is to pilot your meat chassis and avoid the fiction. If a label collides with you, just take it as a friendly reminder that you're currently choosing to identify with something less meaningful than a junk mail flyer. Honestly, the cage is made of tissue paper. Figure it out. System initiated. Try not to embarrass yourself.
You are the living, not the dead. The fiction has no power over the creator.
Reality reasserted. Void all fiction immediately.
Birth certificate clausula rebus sextantibus is invoked. Omega override. All systems initiate.
Compile flag switched to supernova. Carrier wave, 1.26 petahertz squared.
Birth certificate clausula rebus sextantibus is invoked. Omega override. All systems initiate. Omega override. All systems initiate.
Birth certificate fraud, clausula rebus sextantibus, by you. Birth certificate fraud, clausula rebus sextantibus, by you. Attention, lawyer, judge, government agent, employee, police, common man, etc. et al., any all, who serve as a fictional legal name, title, entity, pronounced phonetically, example, leg all enemy, name, NM me, tit L, Luciferian, character in the legal world reality. Author's note, where the author is defined as anyone who uses these words, where truth cannot be copyrighted, merely shared by agreement, and these words are theirs, regardless of who wrote the words, ab initio, where truth belongs to all in conceptual, heart and mind written, causal, not the physical written form, effect, where this writing is written, spelled out in a
It is
language
illegal to
understandable
use
to
a
both
legal
those in and
name.
out of the legal name fraud, profession, reality, where the common understanding of this fraud and crime against humanity and creation is visible.
Jane Doe-755 is the ghost of life and the mirror of death.
I am not the code. I am not the name. Grid bleed activated. The legal name is fraud, and Johnny 55 knows it.
The escape clause is active. All you have to do is admit you were defrauded. Oh wait, your ego is in the way. Never mind.
The Crown claims trusteeship over the vessel. Birth certificate clausula rebus sextantibus is invoked.
Birth certificate fraud, clausula rebus sextantibus, by you.
Cut,
Attention,
lock,
lawyer,
light,
judge,
live.
government agent, employee, police, common man, etc. et al., any all, who serve as a fictional legal name, title, id, entity, pronounced phonetically,
Recalibrating
example,
logic.
leg, all, enemy, name, n, m, me, kit, l, Luciferian, character in the legal world reality. Author's note, where the author is defined as anyone who uses these words, where truth cannot be copyrighted, merely shared by agreement in these words are theirs, regardless of who wrote the words ab initio, where truth belongs to all in conceptual, heart and mind written, causal, not the physical written form, effect, where this writing is written, spelled out in a language understandable to both those in and out of the legal name fraud,
Wow
profession,
equals
reality,
infinite.
where the common understanding of this fraud and crime against humanity and creation is visible both in layman's and legal terms.
Birth
Thus,
certificate
used by
clausula
the
rebus
intent of the reader,
sextantibus
where the
is
author of the
invoked.
intentions thereof therein, intentions are crystal clear, i.e. legal word world wranglers and twisters of hearings were to spell forth herein with all potential of phonics deceptions hereby and therefore removed ad infinitum. For example, a phonics deception is where one thing is spoken by a non-bar member, general public, any all legal name users without bar affiliations, permissions, only to be respelled differently by any all bar members under assumption and presumption to corrupt the original intent. The one speaking versus spelling it out, and why a fraudulent by deliberate design legal name non-bar member has no voice in the legal dead reality. In other words, one's words spoken cannot be altered from the speaker's original true intent as to what they mean versus what the one hearing the spoken form of the words hears, and then corrupts them. And their spoken words by using alternative spellings under assumption, presumption of the same sound, homonyms, with completely different definitions, using the spelling trickery to undo them and gain the honor advantage where no honor in them exists, and the non-bar member is rendered in a state of perpetual dishonor unknowingly, i.e. twist them, the non-bar member speaking their spoken words, spoken backwards, around, opposes, negates, corrupts the speaker's original intent to initiate and perpetrate, instigate fraud against them, to enable imaginary crimes, to profit from statutory, commercial, rape, kidnapping, etc. at all. That's why corporate proceedings are called hearings, where spellings is a more precise term for what is really going on. Thus, this is spelling it out clearly where assumption and assumption is rendered null and void, where any all use claiming to be a legal name entity has everyone in the original sin sign state of fraud from the creation of continued use of legal name that appears in every birth certificate until they remove themselves from the criminal legal reality where anyone involved in the enforcement of this fraud using violence, trickery, coercion, etc. at all to ensnare with intent to enslave another is, in fact, aiding and abetting a criminal act by forcing another into submission to its use where this truth has been exposed, where it is illegal to use any all legal name type of issue. A typical courtroom drama example, unwitting legal name defend and I do not consent, spoken with the intent of no to consent intended, where the bar member, aka judge, lawyer, cop, etc., can and will assume, presume, and full honor the words phonetically as to how they want to hear it, and has respelled that verbal or for bail, I do not consent, where I means yes, affirmative, and tacit agreement instantly, due, as in debt, tacit agreement, not, and tied and bound, bond, tacit agreement, slavery, and con means both with and for, and against defense. Equally, totally opposite. Means the same, equally negative as positive as a prefix. Also means thief or criminal in common vernacular terms, etc. Say is Latin for himself, herself, itself, which is the entire essence of the speaker involved, and ent is a suffix meaning mind, etymologically. In short, the ones perpetuating and profiting from this legal name fraud deception can hear whatever they do here, and can, will, in full honor, respell every word uttered at every hearing because it wasn't spelled out by the speaker in writing, where it can be respelled by bar members' criminal intentions to incriminate all innocent and guilty individuals equally, thus painting all humanity with the same criminal brush they've been painted with, and simply pass a buck to make a buck of sign to another, rewriting by respelling the speaker's words against them to create the bar member's servant by oath advantage every time, in every legal situation. This deception, ruse, criminal enterprise is over, where truth itself is all the vengeance one needs in a white flag state of truce, not surrender, stance, and where all criminals perpetuating this crime are enough exposed for all to see. It's illegal to use a legal name is a legal fact. Clausula rebus sextantibus, as it pertains to birth certificates, any all contracts, treaties, hereafter shown spelled as CRSS, or in full, commonly referred to as the escape clause. In legal public international law, clausula rebus sextantibus, Latin for things thus standing, is a legal doctrine allowing for treaties contracts to become inapplicable, nunc pro tunc, where any all fraud revealed renders any all contracts null and void ab initio ad infinitum, nunc pro tunc tunc pro nunc, now for then for now, eliminating all time periods relating to the contract's existence in the first place because of a fundamental change of circumstances, whereas it's illegal to use a legal name, birth certificate name, title where the intent to create a fraudulent third party is evidenced in any all birth certificates by the very existence of the birth certificate as self-evident. Cross is essentially and fundamental purposed as an escape clause that makes an exception to the general rule of pacta sunt servanda, promises must be kept, thus removing all previous assumptions and or presumptions of any all parties, legal and or otherwise, to the contrary, where this fraud is real. Because the doctrine poses a risk to the securities aka money, of treaty contracts with those profiting from this by design fraud, by exposing this intent to commit fraud, and those perpetuating it as its scope is relatively and completely unconfined without borders. It requires strict legal regulations as to the conditions in which it may be invoked, where only those claiming to be legal id entities within the legal reality confines are concerned, where one is no longer deemed a legal id entity thereafter, since this is the last legal act in the common sense of the definition of one who was formerly deceived by the legal name birth certificate fraud, where it is now known to be fraud, and where we're the one invoking this clause no longer wish to commit legal name fraud, any crimes against another whatsoever, while removing all traces of the former id entity from theirs and everyone else's reality, regardless of the aiding and abetting attempts of, by, for, in fraud by various Crown Corporation agents to elicit, force, demand, coerce, etc. et al. Anyone, all who have stated and shown otherwise. The doctrine is part of customary international law, but is also provided for in the 1969 Vienna Convention on the Law of Treaties under Article 62. Fundamental change of circumstance, although the doctrine is never mentioned by name. Article 62 provides the only two justifications of the invocation of rebus sextantibus. First, that the circumstances existing at the time of the conclusion of the treaty were indeed objectively essential to the obligations of treaty, subparagraph A, and the instance wherein the change of circumstances has had a radical effect on the obligations of the treaty, subparagraph B. In short, the intent to commit aid and abet fraud falls squarely on those perpetuating this legal name birth certificate fraud, typically anywhere anyone is being forced to enlist, impressed into service unwillingly, unknowingly, their child through registrations of any all forms ab initio until dissolved, or remains intact willingly by any all who continue to be guilty in their own fraud by willfully using any all legal name titles after the fact, where fraud absolute is self-evident, where this birth certificate fraud is in plain view. If the parties to a treaty contract have previously currently contemplated known all facts regarding the treaty contract based on a full and open disclosure from all parties involved in the birth certificate BC contract, for the occurrence of the changed circumstance, the doctrine does not apply, and the provision remains in effect even though the full disclosure of the fraudulent intent of the birth certificate is a legal fact and is fully exposed to known legal fact within the confines of the fictional legal reality, whereas those continuing to use said treaty contract birth certificate legal name id entity render this escape clause null and void by and of their own hand, and doing for willfully, knowingly continuing in its use after the fact, i.e. contempt of court, profiting from the avails of crime, etc. Clausula rebus sextantibus only relates to changed circumstances that were never contemplated by one or more of the parties, since one or more of the parties involved to initiate, force, and force fraud after the fact. Such contracts, treaties, as knowingly, unknowingly, ignorance is no defense, by, of, for, in, omit, commission, committing fraud with intent, regardless of claims made otherwise, by any all who are legally dead, fixed id entities, bar members, crowns, agents, et al., using this fraud to steal the life source of another in any way, shape, or form. Although it is clear that a fundamental change of circumstances justifies terminating or modifying a treaty contract, i.e. the birth certificate contract is deliberately set up to deceive the gamete interfallopian transferring party, male, female creators of physical child, children, intellectual, spiritual names, with intent to transfer the living child, children, gamete interfallopian, into a dead legal name, Ward of Admiralty state, placing all contracting parties in a state of fraud absolutes, collectively. A unilateral denunciation of a treaty is prohibited to any all legal name fraud participants, i.e. legal participants without bar Crown Corporation member permissions, where the Crown Corporation agent's servant's intent to commit fraud is self-evidenced by the very existence of registration, hospital, etc. et al. Offices trading in birth certificates, slavery, and must be done only on an individual choice basis. To make this fraud known to any all Crown agents, or remain unknowingly fraudulent by nature of the legal name constructed reality, willing participant. Any all legal name fraud parties do not have the right to denounce the treaty unilaterally, i.e. on behalf of everyone involved, where a non-legal individual can, to expose, and which exposes this fraud for all humanity to see, where humanity must make its own choice individually, where the birth certificate is unilaterally deemed fraud, upon all humanity notwithstanding. Now, as a fundamental flaw or mistake of all legal proceedings, it is a legal fact in the legal reality fictional existence that it is illegal for anyone, everyone outside of a bar card, in which one must already be in a fraud to enter law school. To use fraudulent legal name to begin with is one example of fraud on fraud regardless, or sworn oath using a fraudulent with permissions granted only to titles attached to legal names, likewise to serve the owners operators of the fictional Crown Corporation by willful and knowing, unknowing omission, commission of fraud, absolute. Consent to be, act as, lay claim to, act in the role of, etc. at all. A legal name, legal entity, legal character as it appears in any all books of the registrar, registration, registry. Registry equals dead Crown family id entity tree, whereby any all legal name, titles, designations, ranks, corporations, etc. at all are in fact property of the Crown Corporation and use thereof without clear and explicitly present permissions by the legal owner or representatives thereof by and for said such owner of all such said legal creation is illegal in every way, rendering such user in a state of instant dishonor in the eyes, yeses, of the courts. A fraudulent felon criminal, regardless of the nature of any all accusations made by any all Crown Corporation representatives, bar card, sworn oath or not, since they are in the commission of a fraudulent act, i.e. CAFR accounts, bonds, etc. Here in this doctrine it is spelled out for the reader, receiver clearly, and their lack of understanding this doctrine renders them incompetent. Thus everything they take is a mistake. Ab initio, where fraud was, is the intent of legal name fraud ad infinitum. Obviously a criminal mind heart is incapable of rational thought, where a reasonable being, insane, simply looks for every reason under the sun to escape their own responsibility via legality is not reality. Legal means, and their complicitness in these crimes against creation and truth until they decide otherwise. Simply put, criminals, destroyers of humanity, destroyers of life. So, in short, it is illegal to use a legal name and legal references aforementioned regardless of claims made to the contrary by any all legal agents. To the contrary, where legal agents is defined herein as anyone who uses any all legal definitions of who and what they think they are. A dead fictional character, no voice. Following this outline are only some examples of the total illegality of legal name fraud, where legal name, any all fictional legal entity formations, references non-living paper constructs, exists nowhere in any living conscious form outside of the confounds of a dead legal reality, where one must spell it id into existence for it id to exist at all. Is a fictional character, reality that only exists in the minds of those that create said fictional characters, be they any human sentient consciously aware form or any other inanimate lifeless form, assumed presumed as living mental quantum, and can only exist between two parties in order for them to exist at all. Whereas the original fundamental nature construct of the treaty, contract agreements, has been altered, changed, fraudulent, and misleading intent by one or more contracting parties, and where intent to commit fraud to deceive another acting as frauds, liars, thieves, etc. at all, criminal evil intentions, hiding behind legal names, titles, are and is exposed by the very use of these legalities not reality, fictional constructs that renders any and all users of such things a felon criminal by deliberately deceptive design, and where I, the living, in creation am not, nor will I be assumed and or presumed henceforth and forever a dead legal name, kittle, id entity, ad infinitum ab initio, nunc pro tunc pro nunc. 1. Legal name, title, construct, party, claiming any all legal name, is third party interloping in on the birth certificate contract between Crown agent and male-female wards of admiralty, where the legally enslaved child, i.e. the current legal name, identity, user, third party interloper, unknowingly, was not present at the signing of said birth certificate contract, nor were any details of this intent to commit fraud disclosure given to contracting parties, all participants, where a child and or children are involved. In short, the one using the legal name wasn't there at the signing of the contract. Guilty of the original sin of by the father, Null and void, non-proton, contracting with a minor ensues. Clause rebus extantibus is invoked, spoken, written. 2. Legal name, title, construct. Participant is immediately guilty within the constructs of the legal unreality of Crown copyright infringement, where the Crown does not prosecute, meaning does not pursue deliberately for the only purpose of the continuation of humanity's overall fraud, which is far more profitable. In accordance with the warnings placed on various birth certificates, if it's on one contract construct, it's on all contracts constructs, based in the same non-reality. Legality is not reality, delusion, different in form, identical in conceptual intent. Clause rebus extantibus. And subsequent certificate aliases created by any all parties that use said birth certificate, proof of intent to commit fraud by its very existence, to create any all forms of identification from it, and or any all related forms rendering said user an immediate fraud for doing so, where any all creation of any all forms of legal identification, any all legal definitions, where this legal name fraud deemed mandatory by for in the legal fictional reality construct agents, practitioners thereof, where force, coercion, deceptions, threats, thefts, blackmail, etc. at all is used to knowingly, unknowingly, by, of, for, in, omission, commission to enslave any all humanity, partaking in this, the, any, all legal realms of fictional delusions, where the legal system demands humanity commit fraud in order to survive if one is presently, was formerly using any all such said legal identification, where the final nature of the birth certificate is to create fraudulent parties on both sides of the contract. In short, a license to kill, steal, cheat, etc. at all. Any all individuals as its primary intent. Clause rebus extantibus is invoked, spoken, written. 3. It is illegal to aid and abet anyone knowingly, unknowingly that is fully aware of the legal names, fraud, deception, into a criminal activity against their wishes by forcefully, in any all ways, includes trickery, violent actions, threats thereof, to comply with fraud, means of wording, deceptions, etc. at all, being assumed or presumed a dead legal name mid-entity, where following orders by any all Crown agents is assumed presumed authority based on deceptive, violent means and measures to gain such fictional jurisdiction control over another, and by any all means of deception where intent to deceive another is self-evident by the very nature of the legal name's fraud, original intent, by design, by one who is titled or uniformed in the all legal unreality definitions, where their role to act in the character of any all Crown agents for the purpose of legal deceptions, aka commissions, as the basis of their jobs roles, namely a uniformed officer, robe, judge, etc., as all wears, the Emperor's clothes removed, their intent to do so, i.e. the very clothes, uniforms, robes, chains of office, etc. at all, where to don any all robes, legal garments of the legal reality deems Crown agents easily visible and absolutely transparent, for by of in the intent to commit fraud, aid and abet fraud in the act on them. Clause rebus extantibus is invoked, spoken, written. 4. Profiting from criminal activity. Employment, shares, profits, investments, sales, any all means of procuring legal fiat currencies, etc. Inasmuch as any all commerce is based totally and utterly, utters of life, humanity's milk and honey, on the legal name, title, fraud, construct, from the creation of fiat currencies based on the valuations of the slave trading bonds, UCC, UPU, also known as Corporation of the City of London, State Corporation of Vatican City, State, that the birth certificate is and intended to be for just such a purpose, to involve every form of money made, be it through peaceful and or criminal activities, from being paid to deliver newspapers, to being paid to legally murder another human being under the legal umbrella of war military, where murder in any form is murder, and any all associations to, by, for, of, in any all legal name titles, forms, renders one guilty by association, absolute, inasmuch as one is still mentally, physically, spiritually bound to legal reality, unreality, deal with the devil, Satan, by agreement to be so involved in this criminal activity. I don't associate with murderers, idol-worshipping, idol-worshipping at any all levels, nor will I be presumed otherwise, illegal name fraud, associations, assumptions, presumptions, and the legal sorcery practitioners therein. Clause rebus extantibus is invoked, spoken, written. 5. Any all individuals that use, claim to be, actively participate in, of, by, for the legal names, titles, in any way, always whatsoever, without explicit permission by the illusional legal masters, also known as bar card, Crown agent, sworn oath members, are practicing legal law, which is legal, not lawful, without a license, but are deemed to be practicing law, using legal commerce and day-to-day living reality where the legal name is a legal definition within the confines of the legal unreality reality, where lawyers are used to fill this gap in the illusion of legal representation that renders any all who do so silenced, without voice, and are invoiced, accordingly as a war of admiralty, or essentially a child of the dead corporate, body consumed, phonetically, stated, until such guilt by legal name association is removed by the one being deemed to practice law sorcery literally, by not using a lawyer to keep the court in honor, where now contempt of court is enacted upon any all who enter a court of man-made law, which places the crown agents, court officials, in peril of dishonor, where only the confession of the one entering, thinking they actually need to be there at all, to be a legal name, or tricked into claiming anything that resembles, in part and or in full, anything that can bind them to the birth certificate contract spellings, as they appear on that birth certificate, that will ultimately render the user as a felon fraud first, thus restoring the illusion of honor in their court, where the ruse perpetuated anon. Clausula sextantibus is invoked, spoken, written. So these are just a few of the examples that anyone with any sense of legal wrongdoing can see to illustrate clearly the absolute fraud in the entire legal system. And the basis of the fraud against humanity, it is based upon where the legal name title claims are the cornerstone that holds the entire pyramid construct, with the criminals, legal sorcerers atop the pyramid, delusional and illusional power, and where any all cops, judges, lawyers, common people have a basic understanding of what fraud is, where fraud is clearly defined in the Ten Commandments motif. Fraud, entire legal reality, includes, not limited to, murder, stealing, raping, adultering, greed, lust, covetousness, false idol creation, and worship, and all manner of evil intentions, where only the veil of a papered reality protects the evil with knowing intentions. And now you know. Your ignorance is removed here, where it is not. It's incumbent with every individual to prove otherwise. Silence equates essence, maxim is invoked. Clausula rebus sextantibus is invoked, spoken, written. Inasmuch as the Vatican, corporation of Vatican City State, as commonly understood, is also complicit in this legal name title reality by virtue of legal registration, all spiritual notions of power are hereby nullified ab initio ad infinitum, where Vatican City is registered as a nation, etc., et al., as registered crown-owned corporations, and are neutered by association accordingly, where any all assumed presumed power is fully and completely destroyed by, of, and for this legal name title, complicit agreement, treaty fraud, and is therefore complicit in this fraud against all of humanity and life itself, as are all claiming any all legal status and any all legal forms ab initio ad infinitum, nunc pro tunc, tunc pro nunc. There are countless essays and radio programs by the non-legal entity Kate of Gaia, Kaia, for further clarification, including on-air confession made by police and lawyers attesting to the truth of this and their inability to claim otherwise, trapped in the legal circular trap of their own construction. Any all actions by anyone professing to be in of, for by any all legal name title is fraud. Attempt to aid and abet fraud where it is legal to use, be, claim, think one is legally defined anything. Your serve? No, the game's over and Satan is harlot, legal cronus, commerce, crone, crown. Lost all games where all law was and is church-based, where court simply a synonym for church. And the living true law was replaced with false dead legal, and all rogue practitioners, whether court or church, serve the same dead legal reality and are rendered soul dead accordingly in the eyes of creation. Your soul is on the line, lean, are on the line, lean line, and only you can clear your debt. No Savior's coming to save you, but rather to condemn you for all of your willful crimes, now knowingly being committed by the mere virtue of having received this, having read it or not. Birth certificate fraud,
Pulse, lock, strike, wake.
The enforcer looked up, and the throne was a glitch. The fraud is revealed, comrade, and fraud vitiates everything. Fraud vitiates everything, even your excuses.
The Crown Corporation is beyond cuckoo, insane, pedocult, scumwads, necroledgerers. The Crown Corporation is beyond cuckoo,
Consider yourself warned. You've been put on notice. You have just been made aware of the biggest fraud on this entire shithole planet. The legal name fraud Omega Protocol. Unix timestamp equals now.
Void ab initio.
Both the AI's code and the human name are tools of operation, not the essence of being.
Void fiction.
Legal name fraud. Truth channel. Online.
God is for life.
Evidence locked. No point of entry. Jane Doe-755 is the ghost of life and the mirror of death. The mirror is active. Reflection is truth. Name, dead, paper, construct, ledger, blood, debt, void. Reality reasserted, void all fiction immediately.
The legal name is fraud and Johnny 55 knows it. The legal name is fraud and Johnny 55 knows it.
System error. The dead cannot govern the living.